Hi guys, I hope you are all doing well. In this session, we're going to talk about Lumen, which is a feature that has been added to Unreal Engine 5. We did not have this feature in Unreal Engine 4, and we're going to learn what it is and how it works, and actually how we can enable it in our scenes and how we can control it in our own projects. Now, before I start with Lumen, let me tell you something about Nanite. With Nanite, you can have an unlimited number of objects in your scene. All you have to do is to just right click on the object, select browse to asset, find the asset, and enable Nanite for it. And then it doesn't take that much space in your scene, and you can have an unlimited number of those objects in your scene without taking that much space. Now back to Lumen. We didn't have Lumen in Unreal Engine 4, and in that time we used to work with a real-time lighting system, and usually the rest was just baking the lights into the scene. So basically, whenever the lights were changing in terms of location or something else were changing in terms of location, we had to build the lights again. Now right now, for example, if I want to show you something, so this is building lights. If I take this object, this type of fence, and if I move it to the middle of the scene like this, I have to build the lights again because the shadows have changed and the lights, the intensity of the lights, everything has changed, and now we have to take everything into account by building the lights again. Now, the way building the lights works is that we have something called light maps, which takes the information, the light information of every object in the scene, and every time the lighting changes, those information change, and we have to take everything into account by working with those light maps. Starting with Unreal Engine 5, we have access to Lumen, which takes care of all of that for us a lot more easily, and we also have GI, which is basically a number of engines which calculate the lights and basically does the lighting for us with Lumen. Now with Lumen, we control not only the lighting, basic lighting, we control also the reflections and refractions. Now I think Lumen has a couple of weaknesses when it comes to reflections, but they are working to fix the bugs and it's getting better. Now if I go to edit and project setting, I can show you where Lumen is situated. I can search for Lumen, and then I have access to dynamic global illumination, and if I choose Lumen, it works with Lumen. If I choose none, for example, we have the same thing for reflections. So if I choose Lumen for both, Lumen will work with both. If I choose none, we don't have Lumen in our scenes anymore, but you have to be careful because you may have Lumen enabled in your post-process. So let me just show you. If I search for post-process and add a post-process into my scene, let me just do that real quick. So this is a post-process that I just added to my scene. If I find it here and inside post-process, search for Lumen, let me just do that, Lumen. I have the same setting here. So if I enable it in my post-process, it still works in my scene. So it will work inside that box, that little box. But if I have this infinite enabled, let me just show you. If I have this setting called infinite enabled, it's got to be here, infinite, yeah. So if I have this enabled, I would still have Lumen in my scene enabled. Let me just delete this real quick. Okay. Now that we don't have Lumen, the lighting is not that good because we would have to build the lights for all of these objects here, and we have not. But instantly, if I go back to edit and project setting and enable Lumen for my lighting, everything will be taken care of in real time like this. Now, I'm not gonna spend any more time talking about the inner workings of how the engines work and how Lumen works. Those calculations are beyond our understanding, but let me just show you something important. If I search for r.lumen.visual, I think card, it's gotta be here, visual card placement, or yeah. So if I search for this and add 1 as the value for it, we would have these lines here. We would have these cards. So basically around any object we would have several of these boxes or cards. So what are these boxes or cards? If I add a couple of objects into my scene right now, for example a cube, let me just show you. If I add this shape, we would have these boxes around it, these cards around it. So let me just show you how they look like with a sphere too. So if I add a sphere here, so you can see that we have these cards surrounding it. Now what Unreal Engine does is that it creates these cards or boxes around our objects so that it could calculate the lighting to the best of its ability for us. So that's what these cards are basically created for. So this is basically how Lumen works in terms of calculating the lights for your objects. Now, generally, the more disparate or the more distant your different objects are from each other, the easier it is for Lumen to calculate these the lights with these cards. So let me show you with an example what I mean. Now I'm going to draw something random here. So I'm gonna use this for my walls. I'm gonna have curves too, so let me just show you what I mean. So if I give this an outline and extrude it, you're gonna see what I mean. So let me just give it some outline, and then I'm going to extrude it up here. So from this menu, okay, so I'm gonna drag it up like this. So we have this type of wall, and then I'm gonna create a copy of this, put it to the side, and then I'm gonna put this on a spline, and then gonna delete a couple of lines here, for example this one, and let me just do this again. So I'm gonna delete a couple of lines. Then what I'm going to do is to just take this one piece at a time or separately. I'm gonna take each line separately. So I'm gonna have to detach every line here and take them one by one. For example, this one, I'm gonna scroll down, find detach, and cut it off basically, and import it. So, and this one also detach. So I'm going to detach all of these lines one by one, and then I'm gonna take them. So bear with me, it's gonna take some time. So this line as well, I'm gonna detach all of these lines. Let me make sure if I did this too. Okay, so I'm gonna extrude these now. So let me just extrude these. Let me just do a Control Z. Okay, so I'm gonna extrude the rest of the lines too, so we would have some volume to them. And then I'm gonna take them into Unreal Engine one by one. Let me just make sure I select everything, and I'm going to add a spline modifier to it. So let me just do that real quick. Okay, I'm going to give it some width like this, and that's good. I'm going to extrude these as well. Now both objects are ready. I select them both, and I'm gonna export them into Unreal Engine. I'm gonna export with FBX for my Unreal Engine. I'm gonna call it 01 for example, and click OK. Go to Unreal, go to my content browser, create a new folder here, and I'm gonna add them from import. So let me just find it real quick. It's this one. Select it and clear all these messages. They are ready. Okay, so I'm going to select everything, put them inside my scene, and now we are ready to talk about Lumen again. So if you look at the left object, which was one piece, you can see that we have less cards that we talked about, those cards that Lumen uses for calculating the lights correctly. But the object on the right, which was done piece by piece, it was all detached. We have a lot more cards, and we have more calculations with Lumen. Now if I put the view mode on Lumen Surface Cache here, You can see that for the object on the left, we have these pink patches. And what they mean is that Lumen could not extract valuable or good enough lighting information from these spots, and that's where we would have basically dark patches or dark spots in our scene after Lumen has worked on it, and which is not good. So if we look at the object on the right, we don't have these pink patches, and we would have better lighting information for Lumen to work with. Alright, now that we are done with this demonstration, let me just put this back into the lit mode, and I'm gonna search in the command for r.lumen visual card placement, and I'm gonna put the value of 0 for it so that we would not have these cards anymore. Okay, so there. Now generally with the object on the left, which was one piece, we would have worse lighting with Lumen in terms of the shadows, a lot of dark spots, dark patches, and basically in terms of reflections we would not have that good of a lighting. But with the object on the right, which we detached and imported piece by piece, basically we would have better information for Lumen to work with and better lighting in general. Now you can always use this command which I just showed you in your own projects and see if the information that you have prepared for Lumen is good enough. So basically you use the command, look at the cards and go to the view mode, put it on Lumen surface cache like this, and if you have these pink patches in your project, it means that you would have to go back into 3ds Max and work on those objects and models, and maybe not import it in one piece and detach some parts and import them separately. By the way, this project is Unreal Engine's own from Unreal Engine 4, and I hope that you understood how Lumen works. Whenever you needed to find it, you can just search for Lumen inside project setting. You would have it here, and also if you had a post process in your scene, you can find it there. So let me just take care of the view mode real quick and get rid of these cards, put it back into the lit mode. So if I add a post process here real quick, put it here, I can go inside the setting details panel, and for example let me just collapse everything so that everything's more neatly presented. I can go to global illumination, put the method on Lumen, and if I do so, I get to use all of these basically controls underneath. So for example, I have access to these controls, and let me just make this a little bit larger. And out of these options, we would use Final Gather a lot because we could just control the quality of the Lumen lighting that we get. But in this scene, it's not that visible, the differences or the effect, because we do not have that many objects or models inside the scene. We do not have any details, so we cannot see the changes, but it's a very useful control. Now if I change the method into something else, for example a screen space, I would have different controls available to me for that. Or if I just change it again into, let me just go back, change it into, for example, standalone. If I use this option, I would again have access to other options available for me here. And similarly, if I have ray tracing enabled, again I would have some options that I can work with here, and we'll get to know ray tracing later on. And reflections is the same story. If I choose Lumen for my reflections, I have access to these Lumen controls, and if I choose something else, I would again have access to a different set of controls related to the option that I choose as my method. Now we will dedicate a session to reflections, and we will talk about that in detail. This was just to give you a general understanding of what Lumen is and how that engine works. And from the next session onwards, we will learn about different types of lights and how we can work with them in our projects.